The cry that no one heard the twin suns of Ares Prime were setting, painting the sky in gold and purple. The great marketplace was alive with noise, alien merchants shouting prices, the hiss of steam from food stalls, the clinking of coins in many different shapes and metals. Strange smells filled the air suite, sour, burning hot spices that made the nose sting. It was a place where thousands of species came to trade. Colorful lights flashed over every stall. Strange creatures with long tails, hard shells, or glowing. Eyes moved in every direction. It was busy. It was loud. And in all that chaos, one sound went almost unnoticed. A cry. Not loud, not sharp, but desperate. Near the corner of a narrow street, sitting against the cold metal wall of a closed shop, was a figure wrapped in a torn, faded cloak. Her scales were pale, almost gray, and her eyes were red from tears. In her arms lay a small, alien child, its breathing slow, chest rising and falling like it was too heavy for the little body to lift. The mother's hands shook as she held him closer. "Please. Someone, medicine. Please," she whispered in the common trade language. But the crowd passed her like she was invisible. A tall insectoid carrying a bag of spices walked by, clicking its mandibles. A scaled merchant selling glowing fruit stepped around her without even looking down. A pair of reptilian guards in black armor passed on the other side of the street, their eyes cold and fixed ahead. She tried again, her voice breaking. "My child, he is sick. Please, medicine." Her words were swallowed by the noise of bargaining and laughter. Some aliens did glance her way, but their faces twisted in something like disgust. One whispered to another, "Thyran scum shouldn't even be here." Another snorted, "Better one less of them." The mother heard them, and her head lowered. Her tail curled around a small child, as if to shield him from the words. And then, among the noise and movement, the humans stepped off. A cargo transport at the far end of the street. Daniel Carter, a tall man in a dark jacket, carrying a small bag, his boots still dusty from his last job on a mining world. His eyes scanned the market like someone used to trouble. He didn't plan to stay here long, just get food, maybe some spare ship parts, and move on. But then he heard it. At first, it was only a soft sound behind the calls of merchants. Then it came again, a voice, weak, trembling. He turned his head and saw her, the cloaked figure on the ground, clutching something small in her arms. He walked closer, frowning. The aliens nearby gave him strange looks, but he ignored them. When he stopped in front of her, he could finally see the child's small face covered in faint blue markings, eyes half shut, breath coming in shallow gasps. Daniel crouched down. "What happened?" he asked. The mother looked up slowly. Her eyes were large, shining with tears, but there was something else in them. Fear. "My baby," she said in broken trade language. "He needs medicine. Very fast. Please." Daniel glanced around. "Where can we get it?" She pointed weakly to a row of stalls further down the street. A sign there had a red cross-like mark, a universal symbol for medical supplies. It was so close, maybe only a minute's walk away. "All right," Daniel said. "I'll get it." But before he could stand, a shadow fell across them. An alien merchant, tall and covered in orange fur, stepped forward. "Don't waste your time, human," he said in a rough voice. "Thyran sickness is not our problem." Daniel stared at him. "Not your problem? She's begging for help." The merchant laughed, showing sharp teeth. "Her kind started the border wars. Many dead. Now no one helps Thyrans. Law says outsiders get nothing without clearance." Another voice joined in, this time from a guard, armor gleaming under the neon lights. "She's lucky she's not in a cell," the guard said coldly. "Move along, human." Daniel looked back at the mother. She was silent now, holding her child tightly, like she knew there was no more point in asking. He felt heat rise in his chest. Rules, politics, old grudges. And here, right in front of him, a child was dying. The crowd began to move again, the brief pause ending. Merchants returned to selling, guards walked away, and the marketplace swallowed up the sound of the mother's soft sobs. Daniel stayed there for a moment longer, his mind racing. He could walk away, pretend he never saw this. That's what everyone else did. That's what the rules here wanted him to do. But something inside him refused that. As he stood up, the alien mother's hand reached out, catching his sleeve. Her grip was weak, but her eyes, they were the strongest thing he had seen all day. "Please," she whispered again. "Only hours left." Daniel didn't answer. He just looked once more toward the medical stall, then back at the guards, who now stood watch nearby. And in that moment, he made a choice. Asterisk the wall of indifference. Daniel didn't move for a few seconds. The sound of the marketplace rushed back into his ears, the laughter, the clanging of tools, the hum of floating cargo drones. But all he could focus on was the alien mother's trembling grip on his sleeve. When he finally stepped toward the medical stall, her hand slipped away, but her eyes followed him like a silent plea. The stall wasn't far, but every step felt like crossing enemy territory. Eyes turned toward him, some curious, some openly hostile. A group of blue-skinned traders paused their conversation to glare at him. One muttered something in a language Daniel didn't know, but the tone was clear. "Not your fight. Human." He reached the stall, a clean counter lined with sealed medical kits. Behind it stood a tall merchant with smooth, silver skin and eyes like polished metal. He didn't smile. "I need medicine," Daniel said, pointing to the kit with the red cross. The merchant's gaze slid over Daniel, then past him to where the alien mother sat. "Who is it for?" the merchant asked flatly. "A child. She's sick. She needs Thyron." The merchant's voice hardened like stone. "Then no." Daniel blinked. "No, I have money." "I said no." The merchant's voice was louder now, drawing the attention of nearby shoppers. "By order of the Varese Trade Council, no aid to Thyrans without official approval." Daniel leaned forward, his jaw tight. "And how long does that take?" The merchant's lips curved into something that was almost a smile, but colder. "Approval is never given." The words hit harder than Daniel expected. He had seen corruption before, but this wasn't just bureaucracy. This was cruelty, written into the rules. "She's dying," Daniel said, his voice low. "You could save her." The merchant shrugged. "Better she dies here than grows to cause more wars. Move along, human. Spend your credits elsewhere." A sudden, sharp click of metal echoed behind Daniel, two armored guards stepping in close. The taller one, a reptilian with black scales, spoke. "You're interfering with lawful trade. Leave." Daniel's hands curled into fists, but he forced them open. "Lawful? You call letting a kid die lawful?" The guard stepped closer until Daniel could see the reflection of his own face in the creature's visor. "Careful, human. This isn't your world. Our rules are justice. You stay in line, you stay alive." Daniel glanced past the guards. The mother hadn't moved, still clutching the child, her head bowed. Around her, the crowd flowed like a river avoiding a rock. Not one hand reached for her. Not one voice spoke for her. He turned back to the merchant. "So if she had credits, you'd still refuse?" "Yes," the merchant said simply. Daniel's mind flashed back to other places, planets where famine was ignored, colonies left to die because the paperwork said they weren't priority. He remembered the hollow eyes of people who had been abandoned by the galaxy's rules, and in that moment, something inside him snapped. He leaned in closer to the merchant, speaking in a voice that was almost too calm. "I'm going to get that medicine, and when I do, I won't be paying for it." The merchant froze, then laughed short, sharp, mocking. "You'll be in a cell before you take one step." Daniel smiled without humor. "We'll see." He turned, brushing past the guards. One reached for his arm, but Daniel stepped into the crowd before they could grab him. The market's noise swallowed him up again. Neon signs flashed across his face, and alien voices filled the air, but his mind was already racing ahead. Front door was closed. He'd find another way in. From the shadows of a narrow side street, Daniel glanced back at the stall. The merchant was already speaking to a guard, no doubt warning them about the troublemaker human. Daniel muttered to himself, "If rules block the right thing, break the rules." And for the first time since landing on Vari's Prime, a small smile touched his lips, not the smile of someone amused, but of someone who had just made a dangerous decision. Asterisk the human who doesn't. No, the rules night on Vari's Prime wasn't dark. The twin suns had set, but the city glowed. Neon signs pulsed in strange colors, casting shifting shadows through the narrow streets. Above, massive cargo haulers drifted between floating docking platforms, their engines rumbling like distant thunder. The air smelled faintly of metal and rain, even though rain never reached the lower markets. Daniel stood in the mouth of an alley, watching the medical supplies stall from a distance. During the day, the crowd made him invisible. At night, invisibility required skill. 2 guards stood near the stall now, weapons slung casually, but their eyes scanning constantly. Overhead, security drones drifted in slow arcs, their glowing lenses clicking as they locked onto targets, scanned them, then moved on. Daniel tugged his jacket tighter. He didn't have much, no proper disguise, no access codes, no bribe money. But he had one thing, stubbornness that most species called reckless. He moved along the shadowed edge of the street, every step careful, every breath slow. A drunk alien staggered past him, spilling something sticky that hissed against the metal floor. Daniel used the moment to slip behind a supply crate. From here, he could see the back entrance to the medical stall. No guards, but a small, spider-like turret sat in the corner, its thin legs twitching every few seconds. The thing didn't sleep. Daniel reached into his bag and pulled out an old multi-tool scratched, bent, but still working. He waited until the turret's lens swept left, then darted forward, crouching low. The machine clicked, rotated. Daniel froze. The lens passed over him, then moved on. The back door was locked. Of course, an alien keypad with glowing symbols he couldn't read. But Daniel had learned something from years of odd jobs across different systems. Security tech looked different, but it often failed the same way. He pried open the small panel beneath the keypad. Inside, glowing wires pulsed like veins. He touched 2 together, nothing. Tried a third. The door let out a sharp beep, then a louder beep. Then the turret legs twitched faster. "Ah, hell," Daniel whispered, twisting 2 other wires. The lock hissed open just as the turret swiveled toward him. He slid inside and pulled the door shut. A soft click told him the turret had reset. Inside, the room was quiet, too quiet. Rows of shelves lined the walls, holding silver canisters, small medical kits, and clear bottles filled with strange glowing liquids. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and something sweet. Daniel's eyes swept the shelves until he spotted the Red Cross symbol. A small case sat there, sealed, labeled in blocky alien script. He grabbed it, and that's when the lights changed. A deep, thrumming hum filled the room. Thin beams of blue light shot down from the ceiling, forming a grid across the floor. Motion sensors. Daniel froze. One wrong step in the room would screen his location to every guard in the district. He studied the grid. The beam shifted every few seconds, the gaps moving unpredictably. He took a slow breath, waiting for the right moment. 1 step. 2. The case felt heavy in his hands, like it carried not just medicine, but the life of the child outside. Halfway through, one of the beams flickered unexpectedly, closing the gap before he reached it. He stopped dead, heart hammering. The beam passed so close he felt the heat on his face. 3 more careful steps, and he reached the back door again. He pushed it open and froze. The alley outside was no longer empty. A towering insectoid guard stood there, its 4 eyes glinting under the neon glow. Its voice clicked in the alien language before switching to the common tongue. Human. Step forward, slowly. Daniel's mind raced. If he ran, the turret would shred him. If he fought, he'd lose. He needed something else. He spotted a small fruit cart nearby, an unattended stall with open containers of bright blue, juice-filled pods. He stepped forward, feigning a stumble, then accidentally knocked over the cart. The pods burst, splattering sticky juice all over the guard's legs. The insectoid hissed in disgust, stepping back to scrape it off. Daniel didn't wait. He slipped into the crowd before the guard even looked up. Minutes later, he was in the Undercity again, moving through dim tunnels lit only by flickering wall lamps. The alien mother was there, still in the same spot. The child's breathing was shallower now, almost not there. Daniel knelt and placed the case in her hands. Her eyes widened. She looked at him like she was trying to believe he was real. For him, Daniel said simply. She clutched the case to her chest. You risked. Daniel shook his head. Not for you, for him. But deep inside, he knew that wasn't true. It was for both of them. And maybe for himself, because walking away would have been worse than getting caught. Asterisk, the risky plan, the medicine was in her hands, but the danger wasn't over. It had only started. Daniel could hear it in the distance, the deep, rising hum of the city's alert system. Somewhere above, sirens began to wail in a tone that made the skin prickle. On Varis Prime, that sound didn't mean help is coming. It meant run, if you can. The alien mother was trying to open the case, her hands shaking. Daniel stopped her. Not here, he whispered sharply. They'll track the seal. We have to move. She looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. Her voice was small. Where? Daniel scanned the tunnel. The Undercity stretched in both directions, a maze of flickering lights, leaking pipes, and shadows that could hide anything or anyone. He had never been here before. He had no map. But he had instincts, and right now they screamed downhill. They moved quickly, the mother clutching her child tight. Every few steps, Daniel glanced over his shoulder. At first, there was nothing. Then shapes. Tall, moving shapes. The guards weren't coming alone. They had hunters with them, long-limbed, thin-faced aliens with glowing eyes and sensor masks. Bounty hunters. Daniel cursed under his breath. That meant they were serious. Hunters didn't care about rules. They cared about payment. And for a job like this, payment would be very good. They turned into a wider passage, lit by the cold. Glow of neon signs advertising cheap repairs, food stalls, and no questions asked housing. Daniel pulled the mother into a small alcove as a pair of hoverbikes screamed past overhead, engines leaving a chemical taste in the air. The hunters were close now. He could hear them speaking in clipped bursts of trade language. Human male, carrying case, possible firing contact. Daniel looked at the mother. Can you run? She nodded, but her grip on the child never loosened. I can. Then, follow me. Don't stop. Don't look back. They burst from the alcove into the main path. Shouts erupted behind them. Hunters had spotted them. A sudden zing cut the air. Something fast and sharp slammed into the wall beside Daniel's head, sparking on the metal. Energy darts. Non-lethal if you were lucky. Very lethal if you weren't. Daniel ducked low, pulling the mother into a weaving path through market stalls. An angry vendor shouted as they knocked over a display of steaming food. The smell of spice and burnt oil filled the air, mixing with the shouts of the crowd. The chaos gave them seconds they needed. Daniel spotted a side tunnel with a broken light. Without hesitation, he dragged her inside. A narrow space twisted downward, the sound of pursuit fading slightly. But the relief didn't last. Something clicked ahead of them. Daniel froze. A shape moved in the darkness. 2, maybe 3, guards. Not hunters. Locals, tall, thin aliens with scavenger gear and hungry eyes. Tunnel gangs. And they had just noticed the silver case in the mother's arms. One stepped forward, voice dripping with false friendliness. "You lost, human?" Daniel kept his voice calm. "Just passing through?" The alien's gaze flicked to the case. "That's a nice box. Looks valuable." Daniel didn't answer. His right hand slowly slipped into his jacket, fingers brushing the handle of the small shock baton he carried. The alien grinned wider. "Why don't you give it here? And we'll let you—" A voice cut through the tunnel. Harsh, metallic. The hunters had arrived. The gang melted back into the shadows. Even thieves didn't want to deal with paid killers. Daniel took the chance, shoving the mother forward. They ran again. Up ahead, a faint light appeared. The tunnel's end. They pushed through the last few meters and spilled out into an open area beneath the city's transport rails. Above, trains shot past with deafening speed. Daniel spotted an old cargo lift by the far wall. If they could reach it, they might make it to the surface. But between them and the lift stood 2 hunters, weapons already drawn. The taller one spoke, voice filtered through the mask. "The case, now." Daniel's grip tightened on the baton. His mind calculated the distance, the angles, the risks. He had maybe 3 seconds to decide, and somewhere deep inside, he knew this was the point of no return. The chase through Varies Prime. The 2 hunters blocked the path like living walls. Their weapons hummed a low, dangerous sound that vibrated. In Daniel's chest, one hunter's mask glowed faint red, scanning him. The other's weapon shifted, splitting into 3 sharp, glowing prongs. "The case," the taller one repeated. "Now." Daniel didn't move. His heart was pounding, but his face stayed calm. He knew something about hunters. They were used to prey running, begging, hiding. They weren't used to prey attacking. "Sure," Daniel said, raising the case. "Slowly? Come take it." The taller hunter stepped forward, weapon lowering just enough. That was the opening. Daniel flicked his wrist. A small metal sphere rolled from his palm and clinked against the floor. It wasn't a grenade. It was a flare from his ship kit. But down here, in the dim undercity, it might as well have been. A flash bang. Light exploded in the tunnel, white-hot and blinding. The hunters staggered back, hissing in their language, masks scrambling to auto-adjust. "Run!" Daniel shouted. They bolted for the cargo lift. Behind them, the hunters roared. One fired, the energy dart missing Daniel by inches and burning a hole through the lift's metal frame. Daniel slammed the lift controls. The platform shuddered, groaning like it hadn't been used in years. It began to rise too slowly. Way too slowly. The hunters recovered fast. One leaped onto the platform's edge, claws scraping metal. The other fired again, a dart slicing past the alien mother's shoulder. Daniel swung his shock baton, connecting with the first hunter's leg. The jolt made the alien's armor spark, forcing it to drop away, but the second hunter was already climbing. The platform emerged into the mid-city, a maze of narrow bridges, neon-lit signs, and air thick with the smell of cooking oil and engine fumes. Above, huge transport rails cut through the sky. Ships darted between towers like angry insects. Daniel didn't hesitate. He grabbed the mother's arm and jumped off the lift before it reached the top, landing hard on a narrow metal walkway. The hunters followed, their footsteps heavy and fast. Crowds filled the bridge merchants' closing stalls, workers heading home. The sight of two hunters chasing a human and a Theron mother made people scatter, some shouting warnings, others just running. Daniel weaved through the chaos, dodging carts and signs. The hunters didn't slow, they vaulted over obstacles like predators in pursuit. Up ahead, a street performer's booth was blasting music-deep bass that rattled the walkway. Without breaking stride, Daniel grabbed the booth's portable speaker and hurled it backward. The heavy device slammed into one hunter's chest, knocking it into the railing. A second hunter kept coming, firing wildly now. A dart hit the railing. Beside Daniel, showering sparks, he spotted an opening, a service hatch leading to the city's under-rails maintenance zone. He yanked it open and shoved the mother inside. The hatch was barely big enough for crawling. Perfect. The maintenance tunnel was pitch dark, except for flickers of light from passing trains above. The air roared with every transport that thundered past, the sound like being inside a storm. Daniel could feel the vibration in his bones. Behind them, the hunters were still coming. The sound of their armor scraping the tunnel walls was getting louder. Daniel crawled faster, heart pounding. Ahead, the tunnel split into two paths. He picked the right without thinking. Bad choice. The path ended in a gap, a maintenance bridge missing a section. Below was nothing but a sheer drop into the city's abyss. Wind howled through the opening. The mother looked at him, fear in her eyes. "We can't." "We can," Daniel said, scanning the gap. It wasn't far, but with the child in her arms, it would be almost impossible. The hunters' voices echoed closer. They didn't have time to think. Daniel took the child gently from her arms. "Jump when I tell you. Don't look down." He leapt, first boots slamming onto the far side. The bridge swayed, groaning under his weight. "Now," he shouted. She jumped. For a terrifying second, it looked like she wouldn't make it. Then Daniel's hand caught hers, dragging her up as the hunters reached the gap. They didn't jump. Not yet. But Daniel knew they would. They kept running, the maintenance tunnel finally spilling them out into a huge open under-rail junction. Above, dozens of magnetic train lines crisscrossed in dizzying patterns. Sparks fell from the power, rails lighting the ground in brief flashes. And standing in the middle of the junction were more guards, not hunters, not gang members. Official Varus Prime enforcers, armored, and blocking every exit. One guard raised a loudhailer. "Human, you have broken trade law and city law. Surrender the case." Daniel's grip tightened on the medicine. His mind raced. Every exit was blocked. Hunters behind, guards ahead. There was only one way out. Up. Asterisk, the moment that changed everything. The guards advanced in perfect formation, their boots striking the metal floor in sharp, echoing beats. Behind, the hunters emerged from the tunnel, their glowing eyes locking on Daniel. They had him, trapped between two deadly walls. No escape, at least, not one any sane person would take. Daniel's eyes shifted upward. Above them, the mag rail lines cut through the air like glowing rivers of light. Dozens of trains screamed past at impossible speeds, the air pressure alone making his ears ache. Sparks fell from the overhead power lines, showering the junction in a rain of electric fire. And then Daniel saw it, a maintenance ladder, bolted to one of the massive support beams, leading straight up to the rails. He didn't hesitate. "Climb!" he barked to the alien mother. She stared at him like he was insane. That's That's suicide. Only if you're slow, he said, already pulling her toward the ladder. Shouts erupted behind them. The hunters broke into a run. The guards moved faster. Energy shots hissed past Daniel's head as he climbed. The metal rungs rattled with every impact that the ladder swayed in the wind. Far below, the Undercity stretched into shadowy infinity. Far above, the mag rails glowed like the veins of some mechanical god. Halfway up, a dart slammed into the beam beside Daniel's head, showering his face with hot metal shards. He didn't stop. Keep moving. The mother clung to the rungs. The child strapped to her chest with a strip of cloth. Her breath came in quick, sharp gasps. They reached the top platform, just a narrow maintenance ledge between two mag rail tracks. The wind hit them like a wall, carrying the roar of oncoming trains. Each one was a blur of light and steel, moving so fast it was impossible to tell where one car ended and the next began. Daniel grabbed the mother's arm, forcing her to crouch low. When I say go, we run across. She blinked at him. Across? Unless. You'd rather wait for them, he said, nodding down. Below, the hunters were already climbing the ladder. The guards were spreading out, cutting off any chance of going back down. The platform shook as a train passed, the magnetic hum vibrating through Daniel's bones. He waited, counting the gaps between trains. 1, 2, 3 seconds. That was all they'd get. He tightened his grip on the medicine case. Ready? Now. They sprinted. The rail underfoot buzzed with raw power. The air tore at them, the wind from the next train nearly knocking them sideways. Sparks danced at their feet. Daniel's heart slammed in his chest with every step. Halfway. Across, the sound hit an approaching train, louder and closer than the others. It would be on them in seconds. Daniel shoved the mother forward. Go. Don't stop. She reached the far ledge and collapsed to her knees, clutching the child. Daniel leapt after her, hitting the platform just as the train roared past inches. From his back, the shockwave nearly knocked him off the edge. They didn't have time to breathe. One of the hunters reached the platform, moving with terrifying speed. It leapt over the gap between rails like it was nothing. Its weapon snapped up. Daniel didn't think he threw the case. It spun through the air, the mother's hands catching it, just as the hunter lunged for Daniel. The two slammed into the railing. Metal groaned under their weight. The hunter hissed in Daniel's face, claws digging into his jacket. You can't win, human. Daniel grinned through gritted teeth. I already did. He twisted, using the hunter's momentum to fling it over the railing. It fell, vanishing into the neon-choked abyss below. The mother stared at him, wide-eyed. Why? Why would you do this? Risk everything? Daniel looked at the child, whose breathing was still weak, but steadier now. Because someone should have helped you hours ago. Below, the shouts of guards grew fainter. Up here, with the wind and the hum of the mag rails, it felt like another world. A dangerous, fleeting world, but one where he had done the impossible. He knew they couldn't stay. The guards would find another way up. But for the first time, he saw something in the mother's eyes that hadn't been there before. Asterisk, the legend of the human who helped. The wind screamed across the mag rails, pulling at their clothes, drowning out almost every sound except the faint, fragile breaths of the child. Daniel's eyes swept the skyline. The guards were still below, but they wouldn't stay there for long. Somewhere in the distance, a search drone's beam swept across the rooftops, like a hunting animal sniffing for prey. They needed to vanish. He spotted it. Freight shuttle clinging to the side of a nearby tower, its cargo doors open as workers. Loaded crates. The distance was too far for comfort, and the drop between was endless, but it was the only way. He looked at the mother. You trust me? She hesitated. I don't know. That's good, Daniel said, lips twitching into. A half-smile. If you did, you'd be crazy. They moved along the narrow maintenance ledge toward the tower. The hum of the mag rails vibrated through their bones, each passing train a thunderclap that made the air tremble. Daniel could feel the mother's fear. Every step she took was a gamble against gravity. Behind them, movement. A hunter. The other one. The one that hadn't fallen. It was climbing the support beam with terrifying speed, four arms gripping like hooks. Its eyes locked on them, glowing brighter with each second. Daniel's pace quickened. Don't look back. They reached the end of the ledge. No more footing. Just a steel support stretching toward the tower. Below, the Undercity's lights looked like distant stars. The hunter's hiss cut through the wind. Nowhere left to go, human. Daniel stepped onto the strut, the metal vibrating under his weight. He turned his head just enough to smirk at the hunter. You keep saying that. Asterisk halfway across, the strut shuddered. An incoming train on the rail above made the entire structure groan. The mother clung to the steel, her tail wrapping protectively around the child. Daniel grabbed her arm, steadying her. Almost there. The hunter followed, moving low and fast, claws scraping the metal. Its voice was almost calm. Hand over the case. I'll let you live. Daniel didn't answer. He was already calculating. 5 meters left. 4. The hunter lunged. Daniel turned sharply, swinging his shock baton with all the force he had left. A stripe caught the hunter in the mask, sending a crack of light through the visor. It screamed, losing its grip, then plummeted into the abyss, swallowed by the neon glow below. They reached the tower platform, just as the cargo shuttle's engines fired. Daniel waved frantically to the workers. They shouted something in a language he didn't understand, but they saw the child, pale and weak in the mother's arms, and their expressions shifted. One worker beckoned them inside. They climbed into the shuttle's dim cargo bay as the doors closed. Outside, the sirens and searchlights of Varese Prime were still hunting, but the noise faded as the shuttle lifted away, swallowed by the tangle of traffic above the city. Hours later, in a safe house far from the capital, the mother sat by a small heater, the child asleep in her lap. The medicine case lay open beside her, empty but for a few vials. The boy's breathing was stronger now. His skin, once dull, had a faint shimmer again. Daniel leaned against the wall, exhausted but still watching the door, just in case. The mother looked at him for a long moment. Why? You are not Thyron. You are not from here. Daniel shrugged, because no one else did. She nodded slowly, as if committing the words to memory. Weeks later, on a station orbiting a different world, Daniel passed a group of traders talking in hushed tones. Did you hear? One said, on Varese Prime, a human broke their laws to save a Thyron child. Sounds made up, another replied. Nobody risks that much for strangers. The first trader leaned in. That's why it's spreading. People are calling him the human who helped when no one else would. Daniel didn't stop walking. He didn't correct them. But for the first time in days, he smiled not for himself, but for the mother and the boy who were alive because he didn't walk away. Far across the galaxy, the story was already changing, becoming more than truth, becoming legend and legends. Legends have a way of living forever. Asterisk.